A lasting end to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict can only come through a two-state solution. Last week's clear and repeated rejection of the two-state solution at the highest level of the Israeli government is unacceptable. This refusal and the denial of the right to statehood to the Palestinian people would indefinitely prolong a conflict that has become a major threat to global peace and security. The right of the Palestinian people to build their own fully independent state must be recognized by all, and any refusal to accept the two-state solution by any party must be firmly rejected. Over 100 days have passed since more than 1,200 Israelis and others were killed in the horrific terror attacks launched by Hamas against Israel, with over 250 people taken hostage. For all those affected, these have been 100 days of heartache and anguish. Nothing can justify the deliberate killing, injuring, kidnapping of civilians, the use of sexual violence against them, or the indiscriminate launching of rockets towards civilian targets. I once again demand the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages. In the interim, they must be treated humanely and allowed to receive visits and assistance from the Red Cross. Last week in Davos, I had another moving meeting with families of hostages, and in this case, even some former hostages themselves. Since the beginning, I have maintained close contact with Qatari and Egyptian authorities on the efforts for their release. And yesterday, I received from the Israeli mission a list of many of the remaining hostages. It was also reported yesterday that Israel is proposing a 2-month pause in hostilities in exchange for a phased release of all remaining hostages. I will continue in my limited capacity to pursue all efforts to contribute to their release. Excellencies, the past 100 days have been heartbreaking and catastrophic for Palestinian civilians in Gaza. More than 25,000 people, mainly women and children, have reportedly been killed in operations launched by Israeli forces, and more than 60,000 others have been reportedly injured. In recent days, the military offensive has intensified in Khan Yunis, with many additional casualties. The entire population of Gaza is enduring destruction at a scale and speed without parallel in recent history. Nothing can justify the collective punishment of the Palestinian people. In the first 2 weeks of January, out of 29 planned humanitarian missions to deliver life-saving supplies north of Wadi Gaza, only 7 were accomplished fully or partially. The majority of missions were denied access by Israel. After over 100 days of operations in the north, insecurity and fighting has continued. And we need visas. Dozens of humanitarians have been waiting for months to receive their visas from the government of Israel. I call for rapid, safe, unhindered, expanded and sustained humanitarian access throughout Gaza. And I repeat my call for an end to all violations of international humanitarian law. The use of human shields is unacceptable, as are the unprecedented levels of devastation and civilian killings. I am also deeply troubled by reports of Israel's inhumane treatment of Palestinians detained during military operations. Excellencies, I renew my appeal for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. This will ensure sufficient aid gets to where it is needed, facilitate the release of hostages, and help lower the tensions around the Middle East. War and misery in Gaza are fueling turmoil far beyond. We are seeing dangerous developments across the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem, where tensions are off the charts, with a dramatic increase in casualties. Dozens of Palestinians are being arrested daily. Over 6,000 Palestinians were detained since 7th October, with many subsequently released. And settler violence is also another major concern. The demolition and seizure of Palestinian-owned houses and other structures continues, and the Palestinian economy is in crisis. Israel's withholding of a significant portion of Palestinian tax revenues, the continued prohibition of nearly all Palestinian workers entering Israel since 7th October, and severe movement and access restrictions across the West Bank are all contributing to soaring unemployment and poverty. I hope that ongoing negotiations will allow for the full payment of employees of the Palestinian Authority. Excellencies, the risks of broader regional escalation are now becoming a reality. Turning to the north, daily exchanges of fire across the Blue Line, including strikes on civilian areas, have killed 6 Israelis and 25 Lebanese civilians and driven tens of thousands from their homes on both sides. The risk of miscalculation is dangerously high. I urge all parties to refrain from aggressive rhetoric and to immediately end activities that could further inflame tensions. My special coordinators and I continue our extensive outreach to all key stakeholders to reduce regional tensions, and I welcome the efforts of the United States and several European and Arab governments for a negotiated de-escalation. The situation in the Red Sea is also deeply worrying. Houthi attacks are disrupting global trade. These have been followed by airstrikes by the United States and the United Kingdom on Houthi positions in Yemen. De-escalation is essential, and all attacks on merchant and commercial vessels in the Red Sea must cease immediately. Meanwhile, there are almost daily attacks on facilities hosting US and international coalition forces in Iraq and Syria. In response, the United States has launched airstrikes targeting individuals and groups suspected of these actions. And in Syria, airstrikes that Iran and Syria have attributed to Israel have targeted officials of Hamas and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps of Iran. I urge all parties to step back from the brink and to consider the horrendous human cost of a regional conflict. Beyond the need for immediate de-escalation, each situation demands the implementation of a clear political roadmap that would contribute to long-term regional stability. In Syria, that is the UN-facilitated political solution in line with Security Council Resolution 2254 that meets the needs of all Syrians. Along the Blue Line, we need full implementation of Security Council Resolution 1701. And in Yemen, the establishment of a UN roadmap to implement the commitments made by the parties and prepare for a Yemeni-owned inclusive political process under UN auspices. Excellencies, a lasting end to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict can only come through a two-state solution. Israelis must see their legitimate needs for security materialized, and Palestinians must see their legitimate aspirations for a fully independent, viable and sovereign state realized in line with United Nations resolutions, international law and previous agreements. Israel's occupation must end. Excellencies, last week's clear and repeated rejection of the two-state solution at the highest level of the Israeli government is unacceptable. And this was despite the strongest appeals from even the friends of Israel, including those sitting around this table. This refusal and the denial of the right to statehood to the Palestinian people would indefinitely prolong a conflict that has become a major threat to global peace and security. It would exacerbate polarization and embolden extremists everywhere. The right of the Palestinian people to build their own fully independent state must be recognized by all. And any refusal to accept the two-state solution by any party must be firmly rejected. What is the alternative? How would a one-state solution look with such a large number of Palestinians inside without any real sense of freedom, rights and dignity? This would be inconceivable. The two-state solution is the only way to address the legitimate aspirations of both Israelis and Palestinians.